Now, Sports Talk with Brodes. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Brodes. I'm not in a great mood, and it all started with what happened on Friday. Adam Schefter was on 97.5 The Fanatic on the John Kincaid Show, and he stated that Carson Wentz and Doug Pederson did not speak for 8, 9, 10 weeks last season. And I'm just questioning, how the hell did that happen? In what universe could that even occur? At some point, someone needed to step in, someone needed to oversee this, and a change needed to be made. Not 12 weeks into the season with Carson Wentz and all being benched because of Jalen Hurts. I'm talking before that. I'm talking prior to that. There's no way that the quarterback and the head coach, an offensive head coach too, by the way, are not on the same page, and there's a lack of communication. That is an issue. And I guess when you see how they never talk to one another on the bench, it's somewhat telling. And we always did ask why that was the case. And when Jalen Hurts was out there on the field and when he was named the starter, as soon as something did happen, he would go to Doug Pederson and you would see them, whether it was being covered by the play sheet or not, they would have this talk and they would go over what happened. Then Jalen Hurts would be on the bench maybe looking at the iPad and there would be somebody with him. That never happened with Carson. And I can't put the full blame on Carson, whether he's hard to coach or not. If you are the head coach of an NFL franchise, you need to have your head screwed on straight. You can't allow for this to happen. If it goes 2, 3, 4 days without talking to your quarterback, which is insane on its own, let alone 8, 9, 10 weeks, you get his ass into your office and you talk, you discuss, you break things down. You don't just allow it to keep happening. That's a bad leader. And here's where I get even more concerned. If the players on the team knew that this was happening, which I'm sure they did, there's no way that the entire locker room assumed everything was fantastic and sweet as hell, but behind closed doors it was miserable between their relationship. I think it was very clear to everyone that there was a fracture between the two. So now this head coach in Doug Pederson is trying to be the leader of men, yet the quarterback isn't on the same page. How is Doug Pederson's message getting across if you know there's dysfunction at an elite level happening inside the franchise? So I put blame on Doug. I'll put blame on Carson too. You got to own up to it. You got to be willing to work with people who maybe you don't love. Maybe you're not so fond of, which is crazy because they won the damn Super Bowl together. But okay, they lost trust in one another, obviously. You need to put a fake smile on. You got to put a fake face on. Go into work every day and get the job done. Work your hardest to get the goals accomplished for the better of the team. Everyone deals with that. It's not being fake. It's just not being a problem. I think it's totally fair. I don't think you're a fake person if maybe there's someone that you work with. We don't even need to tie this to football. Let's tie this to real life. Everybody goes into the office or they do their daily job Monday through Friday and they see someone who maybe they don't believe is such a great person. They're not cool with. They don't vibe with. Maybe there's some butting heads involved, but what do? Maybe you put the fake smile on, you give the old wave. Whatever, do that. That's way better, significantly better than just avoiding one another. How do you avoid one another? So shame on you, Carson, for not being a bigger man, going up to the head coach and talking about things, analyzing what's happening. Why are we not on the same page? What can we do to get better? How can we implement things into the game plan to satisfy me? Let's sit down, coach. What do you say? And I wonder, does this relate to that piece that was written about Carson Wentz? Which piece? Yeah, exactly. Number 6,578. Oh, yeah, that piece. It kind of reminds me of if you're at somewhere, ShopRite or Acme, and you get your number called when you're waiting for the lunch meat. Number 653. That's what it's like with all these damn articles this year with Carson Wentz. Article 5,000. 5,432? And all the articles are waiting and the one raises its hand. It's ridiculous. But one of the articles that was discussing this dilemma that we're sitting in, or I guess, yeah, we're still sitting in it. I was going to say, is it even an issue anymore considering he's gone? But no, it still is. This muddy problem that we are in right now, just because Carson Wentz is not here, no longer in the city, there's still so much tied to this, and there's still so much to wonder about when we try and talk about the future of this franchise, the short-term future of what this team is going to be. But trying to get back on pace here, what I wanted to bring up was there was a piece written about Carson Wentz where, out of spite, and this was a Jeff McClain piece of the Philadelphia Inquirer, who writes a lot of negative stories about this franchise, which I guess deservedly so, but I swear there's never been one positive one. My goal is to go back and find his piece on the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, and he probably did somehow find a way to shred somebody involved. But once again, trying to get back on base here, Carson Wentz reportedly would kill plays out of spite and run what Doug Pederson didn't want to run. So is there a correlation between the two not clicking, the two not talking for 8, 9, 10 weeks of the season, and this? Here's where I have the problem with that. The Eagles' offense was so embarrassing. It was so upsetting. It was so in the back half of the league, in the bottom of the league, that if Carson Wentz was going out there and changing all of these plays that Doug Pederson is calling, there would have been a change made earlier. Somebody would have stepped in. Jeffrey Lurie is obsessed with having this high, powerful offense. He's obsessed with having this lethal offense that tears up the league. Hey, you didn't get that last year, all right? No one's going to defend that offense. You were not getting powerful offensive numbers last year. So if Doug Pederson was talking to the front office, talking to Lurie, and he goes, look, the quarterback is killing all of my plays, there would have been a change because the owner would have not been satisfied. The owner would have said that this is unacceptable. We need to find a way to become a better offense. Now, when they did make the change, there was a story about Jeffrey Lurie telling Doug that if he wants to, he can pull the trigger on the quarterback position. But knowing how many stories are leaked and knowing that Jeffrey Lurie wants specific items out there, the sniff test tells me that it was a lie. The lie detector says that is a lie. What's that, Maury? There's another reference for you. Well, that's more for the baby daddy stuff, right? Ugh, what a garbage show. Kind of funny, kind of entertaining, garbage. Did not think we would slip a Maury reference into today's show. I feel the sniff test tells me that Jeffrey Lurie telling Doug Pederson he can do this and that, that's to make it look better than what the scenario is. No, we're smelling right through that, damn it. That's trash. That's what it is. You know, there's so much to really look into, but the problem is there's so much that counters one another. For every story that tells you X, there's a story that tells you Y. And for every story that tells you Z, there's a story that tells you S. And they all seriously bump heads, and it puts you in this uncomfortable position when it's about this Philadelphia Eagles team. See, and another thing that somewhat just popped into my brain as I'm spitballing here and rambling on, what if those 10 to 12 weeks, some of that had to bleed into him playing? My point is, I'm trying to kind of count here 8, 9, 10 weeks. Okay, well, Carson Wentz played 12 games this season. So were some of those weeks, were majority of those weeks when Jalen Hurts was in play? I would imagine so, but he only played 4 football games. So that means there was still a stretch of time when the quarterback and the head coach did not feel like assessing what is going on. They couldn't come to terms. So I talked about how that's bad from a Carson standpoint because it defines the label of uncoachable and it defines that stubbornness label that is a part of Carson Wentz to this point. Doug Pederson, the locker room, it's an embarrassing look. I don't know how you look your men in the eyes when you can't figure it out with your most prized possession and your most important player to the team. I'm sorry, you could say that guys respected him like Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, and all of these other players, which I'm sure he still had the hearts of some of these guys. I don't think Doug Pederson actually lost the locker room. I'm not saying he lost the locker room because you could tell with the play of the team. They weren't a good team, but it wasn't because the lack of play and then well, yes, it is because of the lack of play, but you get my point. When you watch that team play, they didn't give up on the coach. They were working hard. They were just a bad team, a depleted team, a poorly constructed team, and it didn't make a lot of sense. They still did fight for Doug Pederson, but you definitely don't have as much power when the entire team recognizes that there is this discomfortable sense around the locker room. It's like that cloud, that black cloud that follows people. It follows Doug Pederson and Carson Wentz. And I don't know how you inspire players the same way that you could without all of this actually going down. So what about Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman? Don't they have fault in this? If you oversee a business, if you oversee a corporation, well, if things start to have issues and if there's bumps in the road underneath of you, it falls on your shoulders. It is your job to maintain your business. It is your job to make sure that there is rhythm moving forward and your environment, your working environment is successful and everybody loves where they're at and there's a great atmosphere surrounding going to work every day. So if there is something happening between very two important pieces to your business, how are you not in play? How are you not listening? How are you not trying to figure out the solution? How are you not getting your fingerprints all in on this? And the reason why I know they didn't is because it lasted 8, 9, 10 weeks. I mentioned right from the jump, if something occurs for 2, 3, 4 days, that's where the line is crossed. Talk about entering a week during the season without talking to your quarterback when it comes to game plan and what you want to do during that week. Let's talk about film. Let's talk about working on the mechanics. And I know that Doug Pederson isn't the quarterback coach, and that would be more of a Press Taylor thing when it comes to mechanics and film and being in the quarterback room. But you're still talking about the lack of awareness of what's going on from the head coach in this specific scenario. You have to make sure, if you're Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie, that this is nipped. And to keep allowing it to happen week after week, day after day, hour by hour. That falls all on you. Now, maybe that's why they made the decisions that they did this season, although it did seem like Doug Pederson would have been back if it wasn't for the abysmal coaching hires that he wanted to bring in. But they probably did also recognize that this is so toxic, this is so awful. The problem is, a lot of that has to do with them as well. The toxic workplace blows my mind. But then I watch a guy like Zach Ertz. And Zach Ertz is a Philadelphia Eagle. He won't be next year, and his career will play out differently, but the guy loves, bleeds this city. Watching Zach Ertz cry and having tears run down his face, knowing how it is all being ran right now, it makes me raise my eyebrows. Is it that bad? Is it that toxic? And maybe the answer simply is yes. And Zach Ertz is so disappointed that it ever got here. Was it always this way? Not to this extreme. You know, talking, not me specifically, but talking to people who have spoken to others who have been in this organization, whether it's coaches or it's ex-players, there has been this, not drama, but there has been this ugliness involved with Howie Roseman. I think it's reached an all-time high, and I think it's reached an all-time ugliness, but it's always been there. It's never stopped players from performing here. It's never stopped this team from having success under Andy Reid, going to NFC Championship games with Donovan McNabb and winning a lot of regular season games and being involved for winning the division. So it's never been that much of a problem. Now, though, I think it is. But I just look at Zach Ertz and having tears run down his cheeks after being so emotional about not coming back here. But this place is terrible at the moment. What's the correlation? So my guess is he hates that we are here. He hates that this is how fallen it has gotten to, or how quickly it has fallen. It has gotten to where it is now. That is what crushes him more so than anything else. Because it was perfect. Because it was a great time. Because it was everything he could have imagined. Having that quarterback, having that head coach, having that team that looked to be competitive year in and year out. Perfect might have been a strong word, but you understand how I'm kind of breaking this down. In years past, it was never to this level of dysfunction, and it all blew up in everybody's face. And the reality is, they thought they had a window. They saw 2017, so they figured 2018, 2019, let's keep some of those key players back and try and win a title. So they went something that was against their philosophy. They normally get rid of guys. If you just look at their track record, they get rid of guys before paying them to those big paydays. Brian Dawkins is the perfect example. Then you look at Malcolm Jenkins. Now we're looking at Zach Ertz. This is normally the business model that they like to use. But they didn't do that. Because they won the Super Bowl, they went in this uncharacteristic mode. But I always now think about, because they did something so uncharacteristic, do you now have to go into a phase of an uncharacteristic ego stretch because you made that mistake and because it backfired? You are now in a territory that it makes you uncomfortable. This organization does normally not have losing back-to-back seasons. They are normally in the hunt. And because they made these financial decisions, well, eventually it's going to come back to bite you. They normally don't do it to the level that they did. Well, they did, and it didn't work out. They didn't benefit. Now it's time to them to be in this uncharacteristic, sad part of a franchise. Well, maybe you do see the back-to-back losing seasons start to come up more frequently because of the gamble that you went out on, and it didn't work. It just didn't work. So Joe Banner was talking to the Inside the Birds crew about this, and I heard him speak, and I just thought it was kind of showing you exactly where you're at now. He mentioned how with Howie Roseman and some of these other GMs, like you end up extending players, and then down the road, it helps you out because you can, well, you push everything down the road. And when you do that with these contracts, it's a less cap hit each year. So you're pretty much putting a lot of expenses on the credit card. That's not a bad thing until you get into a messy situation where you have to start cutting people. If you get to the point where cutting people is where you are at, well, now you're in trouble. And sadly, unfortunately, that is exactly where the Eagles are. So kicking the contract down the road theory, it is something that helps out your franchise, and it's not a miserable attempt. It's not this god-awful thing that Howie Roseman can't continue to do. It only hurts when you make those poor decisions. You give out those contracts that later backfire. It works if you got the right players in place. It works when it runs its course the right way. But now you have something like Deshaun Jackson, and you're going to have Malik Jackson, and you're going to have Alshon Jeffrey. And, of course, the Carson Wentz dead cat money isn't helping this out whatsoever either. And you're going to have to make other big-time decisions. But the fact that cutting is what this organization needs to do right now, that is the big-time downfall and the big-time gamble you take when the contract extensions start becoming what you do with some of these players, and when they don't pan out, it gets ugly. And unfortunately, that's where they are right now. I do want to talk about cutting some of these players and maybe some names out on the table. But first, I want to let you know about my friends over at Orbit Energy and Power. With over 20 years of experience in the industry, Orbit Energy and Power is home to your solar experts in residential and commercial projects. They are dedicated to making sure that your project is completed easily and properly by using high-quality materials and trained professionals to get the job done right. They even take care of all the permitting and fees right there in the office. Their solar program eliminates your electric bill completely by offering flexible financing solutions such as $0 down. There's no risk and no need for investment. They also sell water purification systems, backup energy services, battery storage, and more. So check out their information. It is all down below. So Deshaun Jackson out of here. He is no longer with the Eagles. And he's interesting because I was asked this question. And that just reminded me of another question that I actually want to touch on too, maybe before we get to some of the other guys that could possibly be cut. I'm going to write this down here on my paper so I do not forget. Let me star this because you know me. I'll write all these notes and then I'll end up, I thought I wrote it down before, but I guess I didn't. Okay. I write down all these notes and sometimes I have so many I overlook things. Deshaun Jackson, is his legacy hurt? I don't think his Philadelphia Eagles legacy is hurt. I think there's so much hate towards Howie and so much hate towards the regime in this stretch of Eagles football that all the blame goes on them. All the blame goes on Howie giving Deshaun Jackson the contract as an older guy. But Deshaun Jackson getting injured, that's just related to his age, where he is in his career, not his fault. I don't think the Deshaun Jackson conversation is going to get any uglier. No one hates Deshaun Jackson for it playing out this way. I think people are more mad at the organizational flaws more so than how he broke down as a player. At least that's the sense I'm getting. I'm sure that there will be a percentage of fans that get on Deshaun and call him a loser and call him an upsetting piece to this franchise. But as time moves on, all this will pass. And then you look at his receptions, you look at his yards when it comes to wearing that Philadelphia Eagles uniform, and then you will remember the great times prior to the Chip Kelly debacle and everything that transpired there. And same with Zach Ertz. I think that there are some because of how, but that one's different because the body language was poor. It looked like he was upset about the contract. There might be a stain on Zach Ertz for the very close future, very short term, very, very short term. There might be some side eyes at Ertz. But 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 down the road, those amount of years down the road, I think we're having a totally different conversation, and no one remembers that last season from a Zach Ertz perspective. No one's going to forget 2020 and where we are and where you were when Carson Wentz got traded and how painful the season was. But I think from the Zach Ertz angle, no one's going to really bring up, well, Zach Ertz was a little bit miserable and he looked so unhappy and he was a baby. I don't think that you'll have that message. And I think that there's a loud majority that would probably take the other side to that. And I'm not saying I'm in that category, but I do smell a little bit of stank, just a little bit of stank that will evaporate over time with Zach Ertz because of the body language of his play this season. And I think the two are kind of different, right? You can look at the Deshaun love and the Zach Ertz love, and you can kind of put them in their own two different categories for sure. All right, so I want to touch on Jalen Hurts because I was asked another question. Now, does it look like the Jalen Hurts pick was stupid? And the answer to that is still yes. And I'm not saying that the only reason why Carson Wentz had this downfall was because they drafted a second-round quarterback, and that proved to him that he wasn't the guy. All right? That message to Carson Wentz was, this organization doesn't believe in me. I'm not saying the Jalen Hurts pick was the reason. It had a role with many, many others as well. There were so many problems behind the scenes that happened that will not be common knowledge and will not be known for the public that did play, I should say, a key piece in where we are sitting today. With that being said, if Jalen Hurts becomes the next Aaron Rodgers, if Jalen Hurts becomes the next Russell Wilson, is probably the better comparison. I'm not talking about style of play, but I'm talking about high-level quarterback in this league. I would still not defend their method of getting here. I'm all about the mentality. I'm all about what steps did you take? Did your steps make logical sense? Does it have a purpose? Is there an idea? What is the motor? Like, where does this come together full circle? Let me hear your plan. So whether this works or doesn't work for the Eagles franchise, I will never support how they got here. It's possible they lucked into this mess. If Jalen Hurts is a nice player, and look, I think that he is someone that you give a chance to. You give him a chance based off of his play last year to earn that role or for that role to be turned over to maybe a backup quarterback. Maybe a Ryan Fitzpatrick, maybe a Marcus Mariota. No matter who it is, the job is not 100% Jalen Hurts. He needs to earn it. Now, he might have the chance day one to be the starter, but if he gets beat out easily or if it's close, I mean, let's be clear here. Nick Sirianni is not tied to anybody. It's not as if Nick Sirianni's draft class was Jalen Hurts, all right? It wasn't. So he has not had this emotional connection or this draft connection with any of these players. He is totally allowed to start flipping the pages in that book and changing them if Jalen Hurts is not the guy. But if he is the guy, and he becomes a stud, and he becomes the franchise changer, and he's your everyday guy for the next 10 seasons, he's what you thought you had in Carson Wentz, I don't give them a round of applause. Because as we stand today, they don't believe he's the guy either. So they took a guy in the second round, and they are now admitting, when they don't have their franchise quarterback in Carson Wentz anymore, that we don't believe this is really the guy. We're going to go out there and get another quarterback, and this is going to be a competition. This is going to be an open job, and you're going to have to earn it. If they really believe that he is Russell Wilson or he is Aaron Rodgers, his ass would have the job. It would be no question. There would be no debate. There would be no articles written about who can win the job over Jalen Hurts. He would be the guy. So to me, it would be them lucking into it more so than coming out on a real hot note going, this is our guy. This is our future. He's a stud. We believe in him, and we're going to go win. If they come out hard-headed and go down that path and it ends up working and they succeed and they win championships and they're involved in the division every year, that's a different story. Then I would tip the cap. But that's not the case because they're frauds. They really are. All right, so I mentioned Deshaun getting cut, and I got sidetracked there because someone asked me the question about Deshaun after he was cut, and that sparked the question about Hurts I was asked about as well. But there's some other names that I think are going to be out of here. Derek Barnett. They could release him or they can extend his contract so he's not taking that big cap hit for this upcoming season. My guess is he won't be here. That's probably some cap that they're going to want to shred off the books. I did find it interesting, though, that Adam Kaplan stated that there were some phone calls for Derek Barnett from the Seattle Seahawks during the trade deadline. So if they weren't willing to give up Derek Barnett then, what would make them want to give him up now? They knew that they were going to be in cap problems this upcoming season. So that's why there's this gut feeling inside where I do think he's going to be gone. I do think because it's an obvious move. When you look at some of these players and knowing that you need to take money off of your cap space, he's one that makes a lot of sense based off of his production and the hit that is going to be on his contract next season. But if there's someone calling for him when you are a bad team last year, and if you think you're going to release him anyway, why wouldn't you get some sort of value back in return? Did they think that the Seattle's offer was so garbage they figured it would be better to keep him anyway? I don't know. I'm just having trouble trying to picture a scenario where you know what is ahead of you in the offseason and someone's calling you about a guy that you think you might release and you want to hold on to him anyway. It's just something that made my eyebrows raise. But he's definitely a candidate to be out of here. Rodney McLeod, same thing. Although good leader, was solid before the injury. I thought he had a very solid year. But the cap hit isn't extreme. It would be somewhat minor, $5 million territory. So obviously any dollar amount at this point in the race is going to help the team. But I do think that it might be worth to keep, although you're questioning what the value would be and how great he would play because of what happened to his knees. I think that there's other money that you can go around and try and chop off. The problem is if you look at the guys that take the biggest hits, Brandon Graham is one of them. And now, if you're getting rid of Derek Barnett and Brandon Graham, and I'm not trying to sell you that Derek Barnett is some stud, but he is a starter. Like, I think he's a starter. He's very average. He's an average defensive end, very average, but you can start him. It's not like it's a ridiculous player to start in the NFL. He's just not worth that first-round talent that you went out to go grab him with. But now, see, this is the one debate that I always get into with one of my buddies, and it's, well, Howie Roseman will figure it out. Well, no shit. Yes, he will. He has to. It's demanded. You don't play in this league if your money is over your salary cap. So, yes, you are right. He is going to fix it. Saying that he fixes it doesn't mean that he gets praised for fixing it. You have to fix it. And now, if you talk about getting rid of two of your defensive ends, where are you filling that void? You're not going to be active in free agency. Josh Sweat is a name that everyone will run to, and I like Josh Sweat. I always do wonder, though, if he succeeds in his role. More minutes defeats how great Josh Sweat can be. Now, I'm willing to give him the opportunity to earn that role, and that's fine. Saying Josh Sweat moves in is fine. I'm acknowledging that that is a realistic option. But that's a big drop-off from the combination of Barnett and Brandon Graham. Now, Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham would be great, but the problem is you're missing out on both of them. You lose two starters at defensive end. You don't have the money to go target defensive ends in the market. Are you going to draft them? All right, the last guy you drafted was what? Sharif Miller? Where's he? Where's the Sharif Miller of the world? Well, they're not here. And I remember reading something about Avery switching positions, so that's different now. Maybe trying more of that linebacker role. So seriously, where would you get this help? My point of bringing that up is, while you will get under the cap, your team is going to get significantly worse because you're going to have to make major decisions that gets rid of players on your team, and you don't have the options to fix those holes as we speak. There is no guys that you can go out there and just go pick up and pluck up off the street. You know, a name that Rob Motti threw out at us was Javon Hargrave. And when he said, well, you know, Javon Hargrave would be an interesting one, especially because you just signed him. I'm like, whoa, could you imagine a situation where you just get rid of Javon Hargrave as soon as you sign the guy? And I thought he had a slow start to the season. It all started in the offseason when he had poor play, but it was based off of the injury. What was it, pec strain? And that definitely costed him a bit of pop in the beginning of the season. He fell into his own a bit, and playing next to Fletcher will definitely help. But yeah, I mean, look, at this point, I'm pretty much committed to knowing you're going to have to be a worse football team. And rebuild is a word the organization is going to have to commit to, and you're going to have to be ready for it. Now, I do think that there is a possible way, and I'll leave you on this note, and maybe we can build off of this conversation for a future pod here. But I do think that there is a scenario where you can have 5 or 6 wins and it not be rip your hair out football, where it's not this football where it's frustrating and it's not even fun. Because the expectations are very low, I could see a scenario where, and I'm not telling you I'm going to be a betting man and put my money on it, but because the fan base is so low and because everyone is so down in the dumps, there is another side to this. It is possible that you win 5 games and you go 5-11 or 6-10, but you're still, you know, there's a little bit of energy surrounding Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, even if they're not winning a ton of games. If it's not the ugliest version of football in the world, there could be some sort of positivity that springs you forward into a second season, a sophomore campaign between the duo of Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, even though it would be the third year for Jalen Hurts. I'm saying that for the combination of the two together, it would be their sophomore campaign after next season. There is a way to lose football games, not be a winning team, not being a winning product, but the football field play isn't the most egregious thing in the world, and there is sense to what you're watching. You're just not a good team. So 5-11, 6-10. Look at the first year of Doug and Wentz, right? They went 7-9, and there was speculation around Doug Pederson then, but there was intrigue heading into the next season. It wasn't the Super Bowl type mentality heading in. That's for damn sure. But you liked what you saw. You liked Carson Wentz. You liked the energy of the team. Well, I do think it's possible, even though it's crazy and on paper it's not sexy, to be 5-11, 6-10, and somewhat like some of the things you saw that leads you more optimistic for Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts for the following season. And I know a lot of people will find that hard to believe right now as we watch this all happen right in front of us here, but there is a possibility. There really is. So moral of the story is, I'm disturbed by this report of Wentz and Doug not communicating from every angle, from everyone involved. Wentz, Doug, Howie, Lori. The fact that it got here is inexcusable, and somebody needs to pay the price for it. And it does look like Doug and Carson were the two to do it. Now, was that because of that situation, or was it because of others? And once again, the end result was the same result anyway, but it wasn't the proper way to go about things. Maybe. I'm not going to try and defend the way this franchise goes about things by any means. But it irritates me like no other. Crazy. It's so hard for me to even fathom, right? It seems impossible. I would love for someone to explain for me how this can even happen. Unbelievable. Well, with that being said, we are going to end the show here. Thank you guys so much for listening. By the way, we are giving away a Ron Jaworski signed picture on my Twitter. Go over to Twitter, @Brodes81. Toss me a follow at the top of my profile. I have a pinned tweet, and all you have to do is retweet that tweet and follow me, and you are entered to win. Every Wednesday, we have a giveaway. Hump Day giveaway every Wednesday. And it all is located on my Twitter, @Brodes81, so check that out. And Coffee with Brodes, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., being live streamed on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Sports Talk with Brodes on Twitch and Brodes81 once again on Twitter. That's maybe the 6th time I threw that in there. Why not a 7th? @Brodes81, in case you did not hear the first 7 times. @Brodes81 on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.